Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're putting on our hard hats because we're about to walk through the architectural plans for one of the biggest names in web development, Next.js. If you've ever thought about building a really modern, fast web application, then this is the blueprint you've been waiting for. So, let's get right to it and lay the first brick. All right, here's our game plan. We're going to start with the pitch. What even is Next.js? Then we'll look at the blueprint for how apps are actually structured. After that, we dive into the magic of server and client components, fire up the engine to see how data works, and finally, we'll talk about why any of this really matters. Okay, first things first, the pitch. You know, the web has come a long, long way from just being a collection of static pages. We're building full-blown interactive experiences now. And to do that right, you need a really solid foundation. And it's important we're all on the same page here. A basic website, like a simple blog, it mostly just shows you stuff. But a web application, that's different. Think about your favorite social media site or an online store. It's interactive. You click things, you type, you buy stuff. It's alive. And that complex, interactive world is exactly what frameworks like Next.js were built for. So what is it exactly? Well, Next.js isn't a new language you have to learn from scratch. It's a framework that's built on top of React, which is already super popular for building user interfaces. Basically, it takes all the cool stuff React does and gives it superpowers, like routing and handling data. And that phrase, full stack, that's key. It means you can build the pretty front end that people see and the powerful backend engine that makes it all work, all in one project. All right, let's get to the actual blueprint. Every building needs a floor plan, right? A way to know where everything goes. In Next.js, that floor plan is something called the App Router, and it's probably one of the most intuitive ways to organize an application you'll ever see. And here it is. It all starts in this one singular directory called app. Now, here's the cool part. Next.js uses what's called file system-based routing. That's a fancy term for a really simple idea. The folders you create inside app become the URLs for your website. You don't need some separate, complicated configuration file. The file system is the map. So let's say you want a new page at yoursite.com/dashboard. How hard is that? Well, you create a new folder called dashboard. Then you put a file inside it called page.js. And that's it. You're done. Seriously. Next.js just automatically knows what to do. It's a philosophy we call convention over configuration. You just follow this simple rule, and the framework handles all the hard work. It's a real game changer. Okay, we've seen the blueprint. Now we get to what I think is the real magic of Next.js. This is where the truly brilliant architectural stuff happens. We need to talk about server components and client components. Now, this is the one concept you really have to get. By default, out of the box, every single piece of UI you build inside that app directory is a server component. This is a huge shift from how things used to be done. It's a server-first approach. That means your code runs on the server, not in your user's browser. And that has massive benefits for speed and security. So what's the difference? Well, think of server components like a chef in a kitchen. They do all the heavy lifting. They can talk directly to the database to get ingredients, they prepare the whole meal, and then they send out the finished plate of food. That's your HTML. Because they do all the work on the server, your users get their page super fast. Now, client components, you only use those when you need interactivity. Think of them like the salt and pepper shakers on the table. You use them when you need to click a button or fill out a form. You get the best of both worlds, the speed of a server-rendered page with the interactivity of a modern web app. Okay, our building has a great floor plan and some pretty magical walls, but it's an empty shell right now. We need to turn on the power and get the water running. For an app, that's data. Let's look at the engine that brings it all to life. So remember how server components run on the server? Well, this is where that becomes an absolute superpower. Getting data for your page is incredibly simple because you're doing it before the page is even sent to the browser. This means you don't need a bunch of complicated code just to show a loading spinner. It feels really direct, just like writing clean, modern JavaScript. And just take a look at this code. This is a whole page component in Next.js. See that async and await? That's just standard JavaScript. We make a function to go fetch our data, and then right there in the page, we just await the result. The component literally waits for the data to come back before it even tries to render. Then it sends the complete HTML, with the data already inside it, to the user. It's so clean, so simple, and unbelievably powerful. But here's the thing.
Next.js isn't just about getting data, it can also be the source of data. You can build your own backend API right inside the same project. This is a huge part of what makes it a true full-stack framework. You can build the user interface and the API that powers it all in one codebase.
And you've got choices. You can build a traditional RESTful API, which is awesome because it's so structured and easy to understand. Or you could use something more modern like GraphQL, which lets your app ask for exactly the data it needs in one single trip. The point is, Next.js is flexible. It doesn't force you down one path. It supports both of these architectural styles.
Okay, we've walked through the blueprint, we've seen the magic, we've fired up the engine. Let's take a step back and look at the whole building. Why is this approach so effective? Let's cover the key takeaways.
So let's boil it all down. 1, the routing is just plain simple. Using folders is so intuitive, you'll spend more time building and less time configuring. 2, it's fast by default. Server components mean less JavaScript for your user to download, which means faster load times. 3, getting data is clean and integrated right into your components. And 4, it's the whole package. You can build your UI and your API in a single, unified project. At the end of the day, Next.js gives you a powerful, elegant blueprint for building modern applications. It handles a lot of the hard architectural decisions for you, so you can focus on being creative. So the only real question left is, what are you going to build first?